My neighbor claimed my trash cans were on his property line and threw them into the street. I moved them back. He did it again. And again. So I installed motion lights. The first night they went off, I saw what he was really doing to my porch at 2 a.m. The next morning, I made a report. We moved into this neighborhood in Cedar Rapids, Iowa about a year and a half ago. Quiet street, older homes, mostly retired folks or young families trying to get started. It felt like the kind of place where people nod to each other when they mow the lawn. Nothing fancy, just decent. The house next to ours was owned by a guy named Gary. Mid-60s, gray hair, loud voice, always wearing a camel ball cap. From the start, something about him rubbed me the wrong way. He never smiled. If I said hi, he'd just grunt or ignore me. His front yard had 2 faded flags, one American, the other a "Don't Tread on Me" one. And 3 rusted bird feeders that didn't seem to get filled anymore. The issue started small, like most things do. One Tuesday morning, I found our 2 trash cans tipped over halfway into the street. I figured it was the wind or maybe a raccoon. I stood them back up and pushed them closer to the side of our driveway. No big deal. The next week, same thing. Only this time, both cans were pushed all the way into the middle of the street. Lids off. Trash scattered. My wife helped me gather everything, and I remember saying, "Weird how it keeps happening." She shrugged. Then it happened again. And again. So, I started paying attention. On trash nights, I'd place the bins just to the edge of our driveway. The concrete is clearly marked, and our property ends where the old, cracked line separates it from Gary's lawn. Nothing unusual. A few days later, I caught Gary in the act. I had just gotten home late from work, pulled into the driveway, and saw him dragging my trash can about 3 feet into the street. No wind. No raccoon. Just Gary, in his slippers and robe, muttering to himself. I got out of the car. "Hey," I called, trying not to sound confrontational. "Is there a problem with the bins?" He looked at me like I'd just spit on his lawn. "They're on my property," he barked. "You got no right putting them there." I tried to stay calm. "I've checked the line. They're on our side." "No," he snapped. "They're on my property line. I won't tell you again." Then he just turned and walked back into his house. I thought maybe I could reason with him. The next day, I printed out a satellite image from the county assessor's website that showed the property boundaries. I highlighted our driveway and his. I even circled where the bins sit. Then I walked over and slid it into his mailbox with a short note, just trying to clear things up. "Thanks." That Friday, I came home to find both bins knocked over, again, but this time, one had a long scratch down the side, like it had been dragged across gravel. I also noticed a crack near the lid hinge. That bin was brand new. I'd just replaced it after the city upgraded the pickup system. That night, my wife said, "We should just call the city or something." I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I bought 2 solar motion sensor lights from Home Depot and mounted them near the porch and driveway. Cheap but bright. They'd light up the whole front yard if anyone got close. That same night, the very first night, I was woken up around 2 a.m. by a bright flash through the bedroom curtains. I checked the camera feed on my phone. The motion light had triggered. What I saw made my stomach turn. Gary wasn't just pushing over the bins. He was on our porch. He had one hand in his pocket, the other holding what looked like a screwdriver or some kind of tool. He knelt near the side window, tried the screen, then moved toward the mailbox. He didn't take anything, but he stood there, just staring at our front door for maybe 15 seconds. Just staring. Then he walked back to his side, slow like nothing had happened. The next morning, I printed the footage and brought it to the local police station. And that's when things got weirder. The officer at the front desk was polite but didn't seem too alarmed. I explained everything. How it started with the trash cans, how Gary had claimed our driveway was his property, and then showed the footage from the night before. He watched it twice. Didn't say much the first time. Just leaned forward and squinted at the screen. Then he asked, "You say this happened last night?" "Yeah. Around 2. I've got the timestamp, too." He nodded, wrote something down, then said, "We'll file a report and send someone by to talk to him." That was it. No real reaction. I left feeling like I'd just wasted my morning. I called in late to work, told them I had a situation at home. I wasn't sure what I expected, maybe a warning, maybe a patrol car posted out front. But nothing happened that day. Or the next. Until that weekend. Saturday morning, I woke up and found something strange. Our garden hose, which was always coiled neatly on the side wall, was stretched out across the front yard. Like someone had unraveled it and dragged it around. I followed the trail. It led to the driveway, across the grass, and stopped about 3 feet from the motion light post. The end of the hose had been cut. Clean, like with scissors or a knife. That same night, the motion light stopped working. It just didn't turn on anymore. Not even when I tested it by walking back and forth in front of it. I checked the solar panel. Fine. The bulb, not broken. Then I looked underneath, near the base where the post attached to the wall. The wires were gone. Cut out. Yanked. Now I was angry. I went back to the police, this time asking to speak with someone directly. I showed them the new damage and mentioned the hose. They said unless I caught him in the act or had clear proof it was him, there wasn't much they could do. "It's your word against his," the officer said. "But I have video. Of him. On my porch." "Yes, but not doing anything illegal, technically. It's a gray area." That's the phrase he used. Gray area. So I did the next best thing. I bought a second set of cameras, better ones this time, and had a friend help me install them. One faced the driveway, the other angled toward the porch. Hidden under the eaves. I didn't want Gary knowing about them. And I definitely didn't put the light back. 3 nights later, I caught him again. This time, it was worse. Gary came over just after 1:30 a.m. He looked around like he was checking for people. Then he walked right up to the porch, pulled something from his coat pocket. A small black bottle, and poured it over the wooden railing. Then the porch floor. I paused the video and zoomed in. It was oil. Used motor oil. The thick, black kind you drain from a car. He emptied the bottle in slow circles, all over the boards. Then he walked away, shaking the last drops onto our welcome mat. That was the moment I realized, this guy didn't just dislike us. He wanted us gone. Or scared. I called the police again, and this time I wasn't calm. I told them I had proof of vandalism. That I had footage. I emailed them the video, gave them the exact time, everything. They said they'd review and escalate. But while they were reviewing, something else happened. My wife got home late from work the next evening. She parked like usual, then walked up the driveway and froze. Every tire on her car had been slashed. All 4. Same angle. Same cut. She came inside crying. And I knew then, this wasn't going to stop. Not until I did something about it. I didn't sleep that night. While my wife was still crying on the couch, I walked outside with a flashlight and just stood in the driveway, staring over at Gary's house. Every light in his place was off, like he'd been sleeping peacefully while we were living in a damn nightmare. I wanted to storm over and bang on his door. Scream. But I didn't. Instead, I called our insurance company and filed a claim for the tires. Then I emailed the police again with the photos and timestamps. I didn't expect much anymore, but I had to keep a record. The next day, I took time off work and drove down to the city assessor's office. I asked for the original survey map of both our properties. Not the online version, but the one with the full legal descriptions. It cost me $18 to get a printed copy. And guess what? Our property line didn't just stop at the edge of our driveway like Gary kept saying. It extended 2 feet into what he'd always mowed and treated as his yard. 2 full feet of land on his side, legally ours. I couldn't believe it. For over a year, I'd assumed we were right on the edge. But in reality, he'd been treating part of our land like it was his. All this time, all that yelling, all that hostility, and it was him who was in the wrong. That changed everything. I came home and paced the living room with that paper in my hand. My wife asked what I was going to do. I told her I didn't know yet. I just needed to think. Then I remembered something my buddy had said once. He owned a landscaping business and dealt with boundary disputes all the time. He mentioned a thing called a property marking request. Basically, you hire a private surveyor to mark the exact property lines with small flags and legal stakes. So that's what I did. It cost me $340. 4 days later, the surveyor showed up and marked the full line. Not just between our driveway and his yard, but along the whole stretch of lawn. They placed 6 bright orange stakes into the ground. They were impossible to miss. When Gary saw them, he came storming out of his house like his lawn had just been set on fire. "What the hell is this?" he shouted. I didn't even respond. I just handed him a copy of the legal survey and said, "You've been mowing part of our yard. I figured we should get it marked before it caused more problems." "You're full of shit," he snapped. "That land's mine." "Not according to the county." He stood there seething. His hands clenched and shaking. Then he did something I didn't expect. He picked up one of the stakes and yanked it out of the ground. "You can't just come in here and do this," he shouted. "That's vandalism," I said, pointing at the stake. "And it's all on camera." He froze for half a second. Then he threw the stake onto the sidewalk and walked away, muttering something about lawyers and "you'll regret this." But that night, after everything, I still couldn't relax. Around 2:10 a.m., the back camera went off. Not the front. The back. I checked the footage. It showed Gary, in the dark, crouched next to our fence. He had something in his hands. He pushed it through the slats of the wooden fence. I couldn't tell what it was at first. Then, the next morning, I found it. It was raw meat. 4 pieces of raw hamburger, stuffed with long metal nails. Hidden in the grass, tossed where our dog usually sniffed around. That's when I realized this had gone from harassment to something much, much darker. I didn't touch the meat. I took photos, put gloves on, and slid each piece into a plastic bag. I labeled them and stuck them in the freezer. Then I took a deep breath and called the police again. This time, I told them straight, he tried to kill our dog. The dispatcher was quiet for a moment, then asked, "Do you have evidence of that?" "I have video of him placing something through the fence. And I found 4 chunks of raw meat with nails in them exactly where he was. I can show you the footage. I've got the meat stored safely." They sent someone out that afternoon. 2 officers. One took photos of the bags. The other watched the footage with me on the TV in our living room. He paused the video when Gary's arm reached through the fence. "You ever seen anything like this before?" I asked. The officer nodded slowly. "Yeah," he said. "Usually ends with an animal bleeding out in the backyard while the family sleeps." They took the bags with them. Said they'd send them to the lab. Promised they'd open a criminal investigation. Finally, I thought. Maybe something would happen now. It did, but not in the way I expected. 3 nights later, I woke up to the sound of glass shattering. I ran to the living room barefoot and flipped on the light. Our front window, completely smashed. A brick sat on the floor surrounded by shards. There was a piece of paper taped to it. No words. Just a printout of a screenshot, one of the security cam stills. A blurry image of Gary in the yard. From our own footage. He'd been watching us watch him. And now, he was sending us a message. I called the police again. They came, took another report, dusted the brick for prints. Said they'd connect it to the active case. But I could tell from their faces, they were starting to look tired of it. Like they thought this was just a neighbor dispute that had gone too far. But I knew better. This was a man who poured oil on our porch. Slashed my wife's tires. Tried to poison our dog. And now he was breaking windows and leaving threats. I couldn't sleep. my wife barely ate. We started arguing more. She wanted to leave for a few days, go stay with her sister in Omaha. I don't feel safe here, she said. I don't think he's going to stop. But something in me snapped. I wasn't leaving. Not this house. Not because of Gary. So while she packed a bag and took the dog with her, I stayed behind. And I started planning something else. That week alone in the house was the longest of my life. I barely slept. Kept the lights on all night. Watched the cameras constantly. Every small noise made my heart jump. But it also gave me time to think. To plan. First, I printed out every police report I'd filed since the beginning. I organized every photo, video, and email. I even created a timeline, dates, times, what happened, and what the police did or didn't do. Then I reached out to a local news station's Trouble Reports segment. The kind that deals with ignored neighbor disputes and city negligence. They didn't respond right away. But I kept pushing. Second, I called a lawyer. I didn't care about suing for money. I wanted a restraining order, property protection, anything to make this stop. The lawyer was blunt. If he's escalating, you need more than paper. You need to hit him where it hurts, legally, publicly, and fast. So I filed for a civil harassment order. My lawyer helped me include every piece of evidence. The photos of the meat. The security footage. The brick with the printed image. I even submitted the survey map showing the true boundary lines. It was long, nearly 70 pages of documentation. 3 days later, the news station finally called back. They were interested. They said, "We'd like to do a segment on it. Can we come film next week?" I agreed. I didn't care if Gary saw the cameras out front. In fact, I wanted him to. I hoped he'd panic. And he did. That same night, just one day before the restraining order hearing, he finally crossed a line the cops couldn't ignore. I woke up at 3:15 a.m. to an alarm. Not a motion light this time. A full-on security system breach. He'd tried to open the back door. The lock held, but the doorframe cracked. The camera caught him clearly. He was holding a crowbar. Wearing gloves. No mask. Just walking up like it was his right. I called 911 while it was happening. When the police arrived, they searched his property and found the crowbar tossed under a tarp behind his shed. It had fresh wood splinters in the metal. He still denied everything, but they finally arrested him for attempted breaking and entering. That was the turning point. Or so I thought. Because the next morning, after the arrest, I went out to check the yard. Everything was quiet. Until I reached the side of the house near the driveway. There, spray-painted in red, was a single word on the side of our trash can: run. Not get out. Not stop. Just one word. Simple. Clear. And I realized, even if he was gone, even if he got jail time or probation, some part of him was going to stick around. The charges went through, and Gary isn't allowed within 200 feet of our property now. My wife came back, but she still jumps every time the wind shakes the windows. We got new cameras, stronger locks, a better fence. People say it's over, but I still find myself checking the footage at night, just in case. And sometimes, when I'm taking out the trash, I catch myself staring at that same spot on the curb, wondering how something so small turned into all of this. I don't know if I'm waiting for him to come back, or if I'm just scared he never really left.